tomorrow to decide a policy rate. Analysts are projecting an increase we will discuss. Also coming up, importers and marketers of petroleum products pushing for separate dollar support and pricing from the Bank of Ghana amid fuel price hikes. Will engage CAS International on how...
As we've seen in other countries like South Africa, like in Morocco, like in Egypt.
We'll hear more about that coming up on this edition of Business Live. Do stay with us. My name is Daryl Kwawu. Thanks for staying with us. Even before the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank in the policy rate to 15.5%, this is due to the rising inflation, current surge in oil prices triggered by the Russia-Ukraine war, and the depreciation of the cedi. They have been pivotal to the rise in inflationary expectations. With a look ahead, you're muted, Kari.
Hi, good evening to your listeners. Yes, I agree with you. I expect the central bank to hike the policy rate at the next meeting. In fact, at the January meeting, they put a caveat that whatever the decision they took in November through January, and of course, fuel price pressures and all of that. And then they opened the door for an emergency meeting should it become necessary. I think this is too close to the scheduled meeting to be called an emergency meeting. 18.7 at this moment, which is the highest under this current NPP administration. I think it's higher than.
We are losing your audio there. I'm not.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. If you could just recap what you were saying, because you lost you at a point.
All right, sure. So I'm saying that I expect a high, just as you expect also. Because, I mean, at 14.5, alluded to the fact that they acknowledge that the exchange rate pressures would mount. They acknowledge that petroleum prices will surge, and that was incorporated into the 100 basis point hike in November. But what has turned out between January now, and then it's a trend that would likely continue, because so long as the Russia-Ukraine conflict continues and it affects supply on the market, we would still see pressures from the exchange rate and of course the period. In fact, the main driver of the February 2022 inflation print tells us that we could be up for maybe even further increases in inflation going forward. Unfortunately, and less of demand pressures really. And so while I expect a policy rate hike, I do not think it will be necessary to immediately it will immediately arrest the inflation trend we are seeing. It might continue for a while until some structural interventions are put in place to increase supply of especially food on the market. There will be some disinflation from the Q4, as my model tells me, but it might not be enough to revert inflation back into this, the target band by end of year.
Okay, there are some analysts that are projecting an increase of 100 basis points or 200 basis points. Just how further can it go?
Really surprised to the upside, and then the threats are still there. And so at least what the Bank of Ghana can do, knowing they didn't take a policy action in January, might be to curtail the potential demand pressures, and then while we wait for government intervention or policy interventions to curtail the supply side really.
And we know what that would do to the cost of borrowing, access to credit. But I want to talk about what can be done to mitigate the impact of the cedi's depreciation on inflation. Very soon we're going to hear the importers and export and markets of petroleum products pushing for separate dollar support. What else can the Bank of Ghana do to ensure that the cedi doesn't go down further? I mean, hasn't it done what it can do?
hoarding and all of that. And I think our FX management module or framework that we've had in place all this while has actually been exposed this time. What have we done in times past? Every year since 2018 or so, we've gone to the market, issue some of those reserves, we go to the market to support. Now, this year, with the lack of access to market, I mean, investors and individuals who trade in these things are interpreting it that we might hit a crunch. And so you realize that demand levels are surging. We are not seeing any supply, or very limited supply is what we are seeing from the commercial banks. And then the other supply, the portfolio investment side, the inflows are nearly, insignificant. And then all of these are adding to the supply side shocks, at least to FS liquidity we are seeing. But we are seeing also demand, surging, as well as the speculative pressures we are seeing on the market that is hiking the rate to where we are seeing it now. Now, the Bank of Ghana's policy of a forward rate, envisaging any significant inflows immediately, people are actually throwing away those forward guidance and then are demanding actively on the market. You see, the last is a target of 75 million that was met. So all of those excess demand will be on the market. And so I think moral suasion is needed at this time, and we need to look at our sources. In periods where interest rates seem to be good, we have actually avoided the high cost of funds on the local market and have depended on external borrowing because they prove cheaper and they help us manage the FS. But in times like this, most of those portfolio investors will be repatriating and then flying to safety. And this is what is exposing the CD at this moment. And so we need to look at those things when things return to normal.
And a final one, if you were on the Monetary Policy Committee.
With e-levy still not passed, exemptions bill, understand, is ready for consideration in Parliament. And that was since November when the budget was read. And as today, 15th March, nothing has to deploy a system that collects property rates, a nationalized system. Till date, nothing heard about them. So it tells you there are quite some shocks to revenue at the moment already. And so my advice would be that beside a 20% cut in discretionary expenditure, and if we intend to regain access to the international capital market, say in the nearest future, say in the third quarter going, then we must look at rationalizing expenditure quite strictly to match the revenue performance at this time, while we that are still yet to kick in.
Thank you so much, Kari Jipoti, economist with Data Bank Research. I appreciate your time with us tonight. Now, importers and marketers of petroleum products are pushing for separate oil distribution companies and oil marketing firms together with the National Petroleum Authority. The meeting was to discuss some of the challenges facing the industry, especially the pricing of products and other operational issues at the pumps. Meantime, the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers is forecasting a reduction in fuel prices at the pumps by April if current price of crude oil is sustained for a week. Prices of crude oil have been going down on the pumps due to the sudden hike in the prices of finished imported petroleum products and the depreciating cedi. The Chamber is reiterating its call for government to intervene and cushion consumers from the current coordinator for CAS International. Great to have you on our program tonight. Do you think there is something more government can do to cushion consumers?
Okay, I think the best government can do now is to remove some of the taxes on the petroleum, the one that was implemented in 2014. That is number one. And number two, I think we have not done well on to the people without any subsidy. There are alternatives for public transport. If you live here in Accra, for example, there are little buses who are renting those buses. I think that governments could rather invest in mass transit across major cities. That is the second thing. And then I'm also thinking that we find ourselves in bad times. One, the crude oil prices are going up Ghana. And unfortunately, we live in a country whereby when prices go up, they don't recover. And so government policies to ensure that prices in Ghana as much as possible are kind of dollar. And so any action of government or any action of economic activities that could put a lot of pressure on the cedi is something that we should.
The price of crude oil has gone down to the 90s now, but you're hearing the OMC say we can't adjust prices because of the cedi's depreciation, and so you wonder if there's going to be any letdown for
pricing window and how prices are determined. For the next window starting tonight, I'm not sure we should be expecting any price reduction, or we may not be able to get the benefit of the price reduction in the world market, all because the cedi has also conspired against the pricing of the world market. But what government can do is how to stabilize the cedi. That is also another thing that is it's within government control.
Food items are also going up, and they are concerned. Isn't there anybody regulating prices? Because it gives opportunity for people to increase prices astronomically, and they wouldn't reduce even when.
Very good question. Today is World Consumer Rights Day. We live in a country whereby politicians have given lip services to the passage of consumer protection law. Most of these things in terms of excessive pricing and price gouging could be addressed within the regulations of these two legislations. But unfortunately, the laws are of the market price. Let's get the legal framework, the legislative framework there. Then you can have the power to be able to bite those who are doing that. In South Africa and in most countries, for example, during the COVID times of their products. But in Ghana, we can't do anything because it's a free market. Of course, everywhere is free market. But beyond the free market, there's what we call excessive pricing. And when it is found out that we have charged way legislation,
which we need to push, right?
Definitely. And today is as I mentioned, today is World Consumer Rights Day, and it's also a reminder to government to get the law.
Also, country coordinator for CATS International. You're watching Business Live. Still to come, French automobile giant Peugeot to officially launch its vehicle assembling plant this month in Accra. We've got details coming up.
As we've seen, capacity can follow very quickly. There's nothing more we want.
Welcome back to Business Live. French automobile giant Peugeot will this month officially launch its vehicle assembling plant at Tema in the Greater Accra region. This is part of government's, and with the current regime, Ghana's assembled vehicles may be more expensive if government does not implement the initial 25% tax increase on all imported vehicles, whilst
Morocco, like in Egypt, once the demand picks up, capacity can follow very quickly. There's nothing more we want. Right now, because of semiconductor shortages, because of COVID, there's been a lot of disruption to supply chains across the world. Getting stock is a problem, but we can overcome them.
Issues relating to stock, to parts, to all the things that you need to do this manufacturing. How is that going to feed into pricing, and how is that also going to affect assembling? Yeah.
There's a big pressure, a lot of headwinds, a lot of pressure. We haven't even started. We're just starting. Basically, we're still in. There are some things we can control. The other things we simply cannot control. For example, freight, shipping lines and oil. And now that the oil prices have almost doubled, we might see even a bigger impact on freight. So these are things that unfortunately are not in our control. But together with our partners, Peugeot back in Morocco and France, we try our best and to try and manage and try and remain competitive. The only good thing I would say is that it's not specific to our vehicles, but it's vehicles in general. It's the whole industry which is facing the same pressures. So in a sense, it's the whole industry and the consumers who face these issues, whichever brand they go to. Now, whichever company can try and minimize that impact will obviously be the successful one.
Tell us about how the continuous change in mind of government relating to benchmark values, currently at 30%. Is this good for business? Is it not? What are you looking at?
I mean, there have been problems with this benchmark value, but I think the government has been taking action. We've heard recently that there's been some agreement with GRA and Ministry of Finance on how to get back to the original values. So it's been a problem. I think we've let, as an association, we've let the authorities know competition is not fair when some people get an advantage and we don't. And it's leveling up the field so that we can all try and succeed fairly.
You have currently, I think you have 2 Peugeot brands out there that you are selling. This is one of them.
This is one. Actually, we have more than 2.
Okay.
So
assembled in Ghana?
Assembled in Ghana. We will be assembling 2 in Ghana. For the time being, this is the first one. This is the 3008 SUV. And the pickup will follow in the second quarter of the year.
What makes this unique?
I think
being assembled in Ghana.
Yeah. Well, it's very fashionable. It's got all the latest features. It's very safe. It also is very economical. So it has a 1.6 engine, but with a very good horsepower, so that as we've already mentioned, oil about 3-4 times. Petrol prices are rising across the world. They are rising in Ghana. Now you start seeing an impact on people. So this is a vehicle that will offer economy as well as comfort and advanced technology.
You were looking basically at issues relating to cost and how gradually, based on freight and other internal factors in Ghana, and of course external factors, manufactured cars, either from outside or assembled cars from inside, are going to be expensive. One of the key reasons why we wanted to assemble cars in Ghana was about cost. Is this cost ever going to go away? Looking at how things are currently.
It's going to be difficult, and with government, under the policy, there are some incentives, and there are some other deliverables like increase in duties for non-assembled vehicles. So it's those kind of factors that can turn people and their consumer habits to try and purchase these vehicles.
All right, full interview airs on the Marketplace tomorrow. Don't miss it. My name is Daryl Kwawu. Thanks for watching. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. The day's latest stories over there for you. myjoyonline.com/business. Thanks for watching. We'll be back same time tomorrow.